to the Lesson of the Week with yours truly, Sean Thunder Wallace. I'm a performer, composer, and professor of music at The Ohio State University. This weekly program is designed to inspire and inform the serious music student. We're all students here, so join me on the path of discovery as we learn together.
And African stuff tends to be really holistic anyway. It's very holistic. In the West, we're very compartmentalized. You know, we try to talk about dance outside of music. They don't understand what that means. It's like dance is the music is the dance. We try to talk about rhythm outside of harmony, outside of melody. You know, it's like, what is this? You know, what's rhythm outside of melody? It's all the same. You know, and so everything is kind of integrated into everything else. Very, it's like part of the DNA. So for instance, like in Africa, if you were to learn a certain melody and you didn't put the right rhythm on it, they would treat it like you weren't even playing the right notes.
Right.
You know, because it's like, what are you playing? Like you're not even close to it, because that's how they hear. And so if you think about that and the influence that actually had on jazz, I mean the profound influence that has had on jazz, then you can start to really understand how you really have to play. You know what I'm saying? Right. For it to really be saying what them cats were saying. When Sonny Rollins is playing, and when Charlie Parker is playing, then you start to understand how you have to really play for it to really mean the same thing and have the same kind of, guttural and really, I say guttural, but I don't say guttural like dirty. I mean like primal or like basic, like, and it's okay. Intellectual is fine, and it's not that there's any, it's not that there's any lack of that as far as the African approach to music or culture goes. I mean, there's definitely lots of cerebral stuff that's happening. It's just there's not the same attempt to try to dissect stuff and make it, it's like you got a frog on the dissection table back like in 8th grade, and you're trying to take little pieces out. I mean, you take those pieces out and you don't have a frog. I mean, you can pretend like you have a frog, but a frog, without the heart, the frog is not a frog. Or without a leg, or without certain parts inside, a frog is not a frog. You can act like it is, but it's not. So it's kind of that kind of thing, and there's strengths of dissecting stuff and getting down, but I think that sometimes you lose your, like we talk about the university. You talk about the university and the formation of the university. You had these, major thinkers, Greek thinkers, like, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and you had all these guys sitting around the table, and they're trying to, figure out what the quintessence is. And quintessence literally means the fifth essence. They knew the four essences: earth, air, fire, and water. Okay, but they wanted to know what was the fifth essence, the thing that made them seemingly act together. Why aren't they just totally wild? What's binding all this stuff together? That was actually the formation for the university. For the university, university is actually two words: unity and diversity. So it's finding the unity in diversity. That's the point of university. Okay. Now, my question is, how is it possible if a person is not at peace and at one and holistic as far as what it is that they're doing? How is it possible for them to find the unity in diversity? I don't think it is. And so what ends up happening in many university settings is you have a lot of different disciplines that are represented, but nobody ever really gets together. and it's not that they don't ever get together. It's that you have to have a special initiative or buzzwords that create that. One of them is that we talk about now is interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary. Mm-hmm. So that's like a buzzword right now in the university. Interdisciplinary. It has been for a while, but that's like a buzzword. But why do you really need interdisciplinary? If the whole purpose of the thing was to say, here are all these disciplines, and there is really one thing that's binding them together, that makes them all really the same thing. So what's the need of interdisciplinary? If you see what I'm saying?
Right. It's redundant.
It's redundant. It should be redundant, but with the way that it actually functions in the West, there's a real need for that. There's a real need for that because it's just a bunch of different compartments sitting around that are bound together by the same buildings, collection of buildings,
right,
as opposed to by the same sense of unity and purpose and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very interesting. But so there's strengths in having a proficiency at a certain discipline, but then it's always becomes the same thing. You have to find a way to bring the stuff back together, to bring it together. And I think that the African perspective on that is probably actually the right one, the closest to actually being able to study stuff, but keeping the stuff together, so that you don't create that kind of separation. If you go out east, it's like, for instance, it's next to impossible to differentiate between a religion and a culture. When you go out east, everything has been so integrated. The culture and the religion, it's so integrated that it's really hard. I mean, the way that people dress, the way people act, everything else. I'm not talking about moral things, and I'm not even talking about praying and stuff like that. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the way that people conduct themselves, and the way that they everything for each person. There's like a certain kind of center, that's happening. And so then the culture totally is around that. In America, everything is just kind of discombobulated. Everything's thrown together. And so it's next to impossible to find the same kind of connection between beliefs and culture, or religion and culture. It just doesn't exist. You have certain segments of the population that are like that, but then it's kind of thrown in there amongst everything else. So it's real interesting. But that's really what music. That's one of the strengths of music, and really approaching this is that everything's together, and you can address so many different kinds of things. And so this is my long way to say, make sure that you really, you have to dissect the stuff. You have to separate it. I have this designed for you to be able to spend specific time isolating. But remember, it's up to you to put the stuff together and to make it coherent.